So hello everyone. Today we have Andres Abeyta. Andres has 25 years of experience in custom GIS education delivery with a focus in EdTech, and he's trying to help more students find their path into the GIS industry. Welcome, Andres. How are you?
I feel great today. Thank you for asking. It's good to see you as always. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So we'd like to have an insight from you on why the GIS field is growing and why it is important for young adults like me to pay attention to the industry.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I think everybody in our industry feels like we're in a meaningful place with our careers. We're helping make decisions with data and analysis for important things on the planet. So we welcome new talent and new people to find our industry and come in and be successful with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was it like when you first entered GIS, and what is it like now?
Well, let me see if I take myself back to the initial days in the the geography lab. I was at San Diego State University. I remember jumping in and being really excited when we got a storage drive that was 250 megabytes, and they brought it into the lab, and that was where we were going to store a lot of our imagery that we were processing from Landsat data. Um, and when we would get that imagery and put it into the software, the the processing speed was so slow in the computers that it might take like 30 minutes for us to refresh an image in a display after running some sort of imaging technique on it. And you would just sit there looking at the screen spinning and saying, maybe I should run out and go eat some tacos and then come back. That's the way it was in our lab when I was first learning GIS. So I've come a long way from there. But we had very limited amount of software. Esri was just transitioning at that time when I was working in the lab with ArcInfo to ArcView. So it hadn't really become mainstream yet. At the beginning, it was some GIS guru geek in the back room that an organization would go back and say, hey, can you make a map for us? And they'd print one out and put it on a wall. And that was really cool. That was GIS.
Wow. Uh, Definitely, the industry has definitely grown since when you first entered the computer lab. But you talked about maps, and I would like to know now who sees these maps eventually.
So that's also kind of a real big change. When we first created maps, it would be printed on the wall, and whoever's in the room or around a conference table, that was the person that consumed the map information and maybe made a decision with it. But now the power with cloud is so awesome that someone coming into our industry now becomes the geospatial architect of an application that you push out to as many people as you want. For instance, the Johns Hopkins COVID map, that was really initially authored by a graduate student that created map services and mashed up data that was fed in from health sources around the world, and then becomes the most highly consumed map in world history because everybody can see it. That's the power of being the geospatial architect, where you can author a map service and push it out to large audiences. And when you do that, everybody that you can't even imagine gets a chance to absorb that information and make decisions for themselves on whether they get a vaccine or not, or whether their country should be doing more for the people in their country. So yeah, that's the power of broad audiences right now with cloud services.
That's that's awesome, and really funny too, because it's almost like you were a pioneer in the early tech industry, and it's kind of great because you've seen the industry grow to such an extent. I mean, to hear someone go from just printing things, maps in the lab that take forever to print, to broadcasting all over the world with the maps that they create themselves now. It's just awesome.
Well, when you say that I've seen a lot, that makes me kind of feel old because I've got spanned this long history of GIS. But I do feel pretty important if you call me a pioneer because, I hope I shared some things to a lot of people.
So, Andres, who is doing GIS now?
Well, the answer is who's not doing GIS? Virtually everybody who is carrying one of these things. You're doing some form of GIS that uses all of the locational based characteristics in your apps. Whether you're trying to avoid traffic on the road or you're trying to find the nearest gas station, there's GIS behind that. Geographic Information Systems, the location of things along the landscape that help inform you to make a decision. So with all of the different sources of information with these smartphones that we're carrying around, that makes a lot of data, and a lot of people have information to be able to build into real estate applications, traffic apps, digital marketing, and marketing certain audiences at certain locations. So the amount of people doing it is 1,000-fold. Not just government organizations where we first started with GIS. Now it's entire commercial sector finds ways to use location to their advantage.
Right. Wow. So that's great. So you're saying it's an extremely meaningful industry and it's newly booming. So it has a lot of potential for people interested in developing a career for tech.
Yeah, let me expand on meaningful. Whenever I talk to a new student audience that's coming to GIS, I say, I think that our industry is really diverse. When I walk around a crowd at the Ezra user conference or some different gatherings, I know that we could be coming from different backgrounds. Someone could have a degree in math, someone could have a degree in anthropology, biology, geography. But the one thing that binds everybody is the idea that we find an interest and we're captivated with the idea that I contribute to collecting data and doing analysis that helps improve decisions for habitats, people, climates, and that makes for a better chance to manage things on the earth for future generations.
Absolutely. And the environment is something that a lot of students have wanting to get into recently too, because the younger generation really sees the need to save our planet from climate change. So I think GIS would be one of the industries that a lot of students could get into. Awesome. And you talked about data, and I wanted to know, where does this data come from?
Initially it was created. I was in the creation generation where we were digitizing in school information for governments, the U.S. Forest Service, your local city with parcels. And we would really just retrace everything that was on paper. But nowadays, the digital age has given us a tsunami of information that just comes at us. So it's called big data. So there's plenty of data out there. And so a lot of us that use GIS are just trying to harness the amount of data that's available and manage that and put it in a format that meshes with the data that we already have. So you mash up these different data sources, you create a map, and you visualize it in a way that makes sense to you and your audience and has a point of view. So it may come from smartphone data collection, like I mentioned before, or going in and doing individual data creation of something that you're interested in, such as crimes that might happen in a city. Those are marked locations that you can put into a layer. And you may be capturing new information from the air in real time, like from drones and planes that can fly over a wildfire. So that's much more available than when I was waiting for a satellite to fly over an area in our part of the county in California every, I think, 28 days and get a new refresh of a picture. Plenty of sources of information. The question is, who can manage that? and put it into a format that makes sense for the people that you want to view it.
Right. And does this data need analysis or a lot of analysis?
Yeah, so think about that. Data is coming at us from all different places, so it's not a question of availability of data anymore. It's who can understand it. So there's always been this kind of pyramid funnel that um, tries to help you mature information and get it to the pinpoint format of knowledge, which is information that you can actually act upon. Um, and that's where we need lots of analysts. And it inspires and spawns a whole new industry called data science.
Yeah.
Um, Data science, I think the first time I even heard of that was 3 or 4 years ago. And now you can get a degree in data science, how you understand and run models into this big sources of data and make it understandable to the point where you say, hey, it's actionable for us to do decisions on. So we need lots of people in that area. Data science and GIS overlap. And if you come out and get a degree and do a focus on analytics for business or data science, you'll probably be quite marketable.
That's awesome. So GIS definitely seems to be a very interesting career path, but how would you recommend the best way for young adults to get into a career like this, besides from getting a degree?
So there's a few different ways. Some of them are traditional and some new ways to do it. But we coach a lot of students that come to us on how to best get matched to industry needs. So you can get your degree. I have a couple of kids in college. I want them to get their degrees. That helps you get a worldview and an understanding of many different things and develop yourself as a person. Um, and once you get your degree, I also tell them you should get a tech focus on something that you really should pay attention to what industry is asking for. So that could come in the form of a certificate or a micro credential. There's a lot of these things that are available nowadays online. You can get a certificate in AWS cloud administration. You can get a micro credential in data science. And so these are kind of like add-ons to your education that really say, hey, I'm focused on some technical area that's probably going to be most of the types of tasks I would do out in industry. It's not writing papers necessarily. It's doing something technical if you're going into data science, cloud, GIS, software development, things like that. You can go to Esri. They got plenty of really nice free training that uses their software, which is kind of ubiquitous in the industry. And then there's really focused boot camps. This is really the kind of the bloom in content management in the commercial sector that are being teamed with universities because it's a situation where you can have industry practitioners teaching what they do instead of kind of general classes that you often get in higher education. And so those can be really good people when you want to learn software development from somebody that does it for a living at Yelp or LinkedIn rather than a general computer science class. We do the same thing with industry practitioners and in industry that someone from FEMA, the US Forest Service, can teach you what they do. And it makes you feel pretty relevant when you take a class and complete a project that is emulating what someone in industry does. And that's why you typically want to go do internships. You want to see what's really done with this tech out in industry. And so I think we give you a shortcut to do that. So our platform is bootcampgis.com. It's industry practitioners teaching what they do. And that could be one of the key sources to get you seeing how you can take your general education and really apply it.
Absolutely. I think education, besides from regular degrees, is very important, especially if you want to expand your skills. And that's really what most employers are looking for nowadays, something beyond just, your high GPA. So yeah, I think it's really great that you're giving these insights to students because it really does sound like a great place to land in your career. no matter what you're studying. And
I have a question for you. So, as part of being closer to students coming out of school, what portion of them do you think are really aware that they should be learning all the time, not just getting to the degree? Because it's something that we preach, um, that your learning is just beginning once you get your degree. And what portion of them are really starting to kind of get that and know I better start even thinking about a parallel source of education while I'm getting a degree or right after I graduate? I'm curious about that.
oh my God, I don't even know where to start. Probably 80% of them don't know that.
Wow. Wow.
And like it's very it's very sad because I used to live with a couple of seniors, and all of them didn't know what they were going to do. They didn't even have jobs. I remember for the first 6 months they were out of college, they were completely lost because they've never done anything besides their degrees. And it's honestly sad because it really puts students in a stressful position because they think they're ready for an industry and they're ready for the world, the job world, but they're really not because they think they are, but companies don't think they are, you know. So yeah, I feel like that is something that students definitely need to improve on. Like get it get something on your skills and on your portfolio and resume besides just your degree, because that is really what companies are looking for. And a lot of students don't even care about getting an internship. They only really do it because the school tells them to do it as a part of their credit. You know, a lot of universities have a credit course for internships, but students don't even care about that. Well, I wouldn't say they don't care about that, but they just don't know. And I feel like they need to know more, you know?
I agree. I get a lot of seniors coming to us in their last semester looking for an internship, and that's kind of late in the game. And then I'm really impressed when I get a sophomore that comes to me and says, "Yeah, I'd like to get an internship, and this will be one of many." And that's really the right attitude. So to that end, I hope you can share this video out to an audience that might be younger and wanting to get into our industry, and should be slapped a little bit to wake up and say, "Hey, here's the way it is in industry. Start preparing."
Right. So these are great insights, guys. And we are going to throw up a slide so you can take a screenshot. So for anybody that's out there, you can have a look at Andres's platform at bootcampgis.com, which is providing education for students to allow them to quickly get both skills and knowledge on how the industry really works. So thank you, Andres.
You're welcome. Cheers, everybody.